Hey, good morning. I'm back at the shop. This is where I work, and I've got the outboard here because as I said in a previous video, we've got issues with it's leaking fuel from the carburetor, I believe, and also before that issue even occurred or presented itself, I found that under load from idle, it would tend to stall. It would want to stall or bog down. So here's a list of the things that the boatyard found wrong with this outboard. We got a fuel leak. We've got a weak spark. Fuel lines are weak or routed poorly. Whatever. Needs correct fuel filter installed. I think I have that now. Fuel in the oil and trim and tilt not functioning properly. Lever will not move. I'm not sure. It was fine for me. Maybe I'm not using it properly. That's certainly a possibility. But we'll have a look at it and we'll learn as we go. Not a big deal. Okay, so I installed new hose. There are a total of three hoses, 2 lines. We've got the fuel pump here, and we've got a new line. I think this is probably oversized for that position. This holder doesn't take it, but that goes up to the carb. And then you've got this other line that curves, and I've routed it underneath the fuel pump over here to the fuel filter, which I just installed new. So that's new line, new filter, and a new supply line that leads back to the Mercury type supply fitting. So I've got that taken care of. I opened up, I checked the oil. It definitely does smell like there's gas in there. So I took a bunch of pictures of the carburetor setup as it is right now, because I want to make sure that if I take this apart, I put it back together and in the proper location. I mean, its settings and stuff. Photos never hurt. And I've got this kit here to rebuild the carb. I'm not sure exactly what's in here, just a bunch of nuts, bolts, float bowl, gaskets, etc. I'm going to mark the throttle position. This is the throttle linkage right here. And so I want to mark the position so I can just put it right back there. I've never done this before, but it seems to be going fairly simple. I disconnected this breather hose here at the top, disconnected the throttle linkage, and this holding bracket. This is likely particular to this engine or engines of this era, at least, or in this size, this era. But it's all pretty straightforward. Of course, I disconnected also the choke, but now it's just 2 bolts to take off the carburetor here, so I'll work those off. And I'm just looking over the carburetor here, and one thing I see is this little section right here. I don't know what it is, but it looks like it's possibly important. It may be that this carburetor is used on multiple engines, and that's some function that is not necessary on this one. But well, I'd really hate to have purchased an engine that is incomplete. That would really bum me out. Probably fairly evident that I'm new to this, and I am. I've been working on cars and electronics and gadgets and all kinds of things my whole life, but I've never taken apart a Mercury carburetor to rebuild it. But this is why I buy used. I want to be forced to go through it and to learn how it is. Now, of course, I'm hoping also for a positive outcome. But but I enjoy this. This is something I enjoy. So these are the parts. I just want to have a look at them so I can have an idea of what is, when I take parts off of this, what they are and what I should do with them. For example, something like this. It's real important to know how to do this stuff yourself, of course. You're probably already in the same boat as I am. You know, I had those guys inspect this thing because I wanted to have an idea. I was hoping that they were going to fix it. Like I said, it was a timing issue. Obviously, here I am doing it myself. But I don't want to have to bring it back to them. So if I learn now, then when I'm actually on the boat and I'm cruising around, though I don't expect to have this outboard on it, regardless, I will have a much better understanding of outboards, of carburetors, and all the systems on the boat as I go through and I'm trying to fix them up. So we open up the float, and here's the gasket that I could probably replace there. It's pretty nasty, actually. So I'll have to get something in there and try scraping that up. Here's another part right here. Oh, it's a little screen, actually. It's a filter. So I got a filter and I got a replacement part for it right here. And the float, probably needle valve. You see how really gunky this is. It's a lot worse than I actually expected it to be. So we're gonna have to do some cleaning of that, and that may have to be on a different day. Let's get this float bowl off. Okay. Oops. There's the needle valve. That's pretty gummed up. I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but so in the bowl of the carburetor, we've got a lot of this white, I don't know, sediment or whatever it might be. Try using some of this carb cleaner. See if this helps. There's quite a bit of this white scale in here, whatever it is. Didn't come off in the dunk tank. Didn't come off with the carburetor cleaner. But it does come off relatively easy with a hard tip, such as this small screwdriver. Okay, I'm back and I'm trying to put this gasket on. It doesn't sit down. There's no way to keep it in place with the way it's shaped currently. And I certainly don't want to mate these surfaces together inappropriately. So what I did was I got some of this stuff, and no, I have no affiliation. I've been looking around for something. There are some other options from Permatex, from some other locations, but and while I'm not forming a gasket per se, this is resistant to gas and oil and such, and I think will allow me to hold the gasket in place long enough for me to get the top on and get it cinched down. I'm relying on this gasket for the seal. This I'm just using as an adhesive, but I couldn't find anything that was more appropriate or more specific to my purpose, so this is what we have. Okay, so I've got the carburetor put back together, and I'm going to install it here pretty soon, but before I do that, one of the troubles that were found by the mechanics at the boatyard was a weak spark condition. So I'm going to take off the hood here to expose the flywheel and see what I could find regarding the spark. And I think that having the carburetor off the time being will be beneficial. have that out of the way. Okay, well, I'm going to have to skip the CDI investigation, the spark investigation for right now. I want to focus, I really should just focus on making sure that the carburetor and the gas situation, the gas leaking situation is no longer a problem. So let me focus on that. Getting in here and getting into the flywheel is no big deal with the carburetor in place, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. So let me go and put the carburetor back on. Okay, well, I got it all back together except for the hood. I changed the oil, changed the oil filter as I said I was going to do. I think everything's in place. Again, I didn't do anything much with the ignition, but I primarily want to see what happens if there's any leaking. Okay, let's go ahead and give this a go. Well, that's positive. Get a little bit of throttle though. Okay, let's go ahead and drill that plug out. And that's it. That plug just came right out. Okay, so I'm going to turn this in till it's seated. I think it's the air valve needle, air needle, something, air adjustment. And I'm going to turn it in. I should point out that it is pre-adjusted from the factory, and that's why they put the plug on it. The United States EPA doesn't want people messing with it because it has to do with emissions. This carburetor isn't running appropriately, and apparently this is part of the regular maintenance. So I'm going to turn it in, see where it goes, see how far it goes, make note of that, and pull it out and put a new one in and see how that comes along. Okay, so here is what I pulled out of there, and you see you've got a spring, this needle, and it's got a bit of a washer at the top here too. My eyes aren't good enough to determine whether or not that needle is dirty or clean or what, but we're going to put the replacement in. Set it back to where this was set and go from there. Well, that didn't work. Okay, well now the engine won't start. I suspect some debris came loose, so I'm going to open up the carburetor again and see if I can clean it out, find out, put it back together, put it back on, see if we have any more improvement. Okay, this is definitely embarrassing, but I'll share because what the hell. I'm a knucklehead. The engine was sputtering and quitting when I was adjusting that needle valve, and well, for good reason. I thought it was some debris, as I mentioned, but really the fault is mine. But I did not connect the gas. It ran out of gas. And it seems like if I put a little bit of a choke on it, it revs cleanly, which means that it's getting a little too much air, it seems to me. Take these things off. Not sure what that's about. But it continues more or less to do that. The adjustment doesn't really seem to help too much in that respect. I put it back roughly where it was to begin with, and I don't know. Okay, so the symptom I've come to the conclusion is, and I don't think it was any big surprise, but in messing around with it, I think that, frankly, off idle, the engine hesitates. It idles just fine, it runs at higher RPMs just fine, it's just an off idle hesitation. And I looked online and I found that that is a thing, and there are passages in the carburetor itself that are specifically intended to account for a lack of fuel as when you initially take or open the throttle. And it just seems to me that I've got to have one of those orifices, one of those passages clogged in the carburetor. This two-cylinder 9.9 Mercury 4-stroke only has a single carb. So it's relatively simple that way. But basically I've got to take it back off and find out if I can see something, clear those out, and give this another go. Okay, let's see what happens.